Okay, welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, May 26th. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are gathering and governing on the unceded traditional territory of what is now known as the Comox Nation. And we are grateful for their care and stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. We have an agenda with the addition of 2 late items, if someone would care to move that.
I'll move the agenda with the addition of late items 3.1 and 8.1.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And everyone's in favor. Thanks. I will just mention that we have Councillor Ward online from Europe. I think it's about 1:30 in the morning for him, so hopefully he manages to stick with us. And Councillor Markey is attempting to join us from BC Ferries. We wish him all the best. So there are minutes there from Committee of the Whole April 28th, Committee of the Whole May 12th, and regular council May 12th.
Move the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. And receiving the following minutes from the public hearing on May 12th.
Move receipt.
Thank you. And all in favor of all of
Second.
that? Second, and then we're all in favor, and that's unanimous. Okay. And our first item is correspondence, which we're also going to swap out. So we have old correspondence from BC Parks on the agenda. We'd like to switch that out for the late item on the late item 3.1.
So moved.
Move that. Thank
Second.
you. And second. And is everyone in favor of that? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And so there are 2 letters there from conservation organizations requesting that we update our property tax exemption bylaw. Sorry, I'm trying to remember what that's called. Property tax exemption bylaw to include conservation lands. If we have a child in the audience. So in order for us to consider this, we would have to change our bylaw. And that's why we have these letters in front of us. Do we have any questions or comments before we move the recommendation?
I think the letters speak for themselves. They're fairly straightforward. So yeah, let's have staff have a look at it and bring it back.
Yeah, I think the motion we want to ask to make is to ask staff to bring back a report on how we might include conservation lands in the property tax exemption bylaw. So moved?
So moved.
And second, Derek?
Second.
Second, thank you, Councillor Ward, and all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Did that work, Rachel, for both of those? Okay, thank you. And up next is BC bike race noise bylaw exemption request. Hello, Ryan and Kevin.
Good evening, everybody. BC Bike Race is poised to return to Cumberland once again, July 3rd and 7th, and as part of their event, they have requested a couple of noise control bylaw exemptions. The first is for pre-race music and announcements on the mornings of their 2 local races, which are the Friday and the Sunday of that weekend. They want the exemption starting at 8 a.m. so that they can start their races earlier and avoid the afternoon heat is the reason that they were given. Based on some complaints that we received at last year's event from early morning noise, the staff recommendation is that the exemption is approved starting at 9 a.m. on Friday, but not approving an early morning exemption on the Sunday. And then the second request is for an evening exemption on the Sunday evening. They are requesting an exemption of the bylaw until 11:30 p.m. to allow an open mic style entertainment to kind of celebrate the end of their festivities. They did the same thing last year. They said it was quite popular. The staff recommendation on that front is that an exemption is granted until 10 o'clock PM. And we were just trying to balance respecting the adjacent residents while also allowing them to celebrate what is truly a grueling accomplishment. So I'll put it out there. You've got the report for you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? No, it is a rather large event, and so does impact the neighbors, so I'm happy with that compromise between the two times. Somebody wants to move that?
One question?
Oh, yes.
Is there still, we're recommending no early morning start on the Sunday?
That's right. Our recommendation is that we stick with the bylaw, which would allow amplified sound starting at 10 a.m.
And that's presumably when the bagpipes would start as well, would be 10 a.m.?
Presumably.
And are they asking for bagpipes at 9 a.m. on Friday morning as well, or?
My understanding is that the bagpipes were for Sunday morning.
Okay,
Now, I mean, that,
yeah.
if that's something that council doesn't want, then that's something we
Well,
can look forward to.
I do like a good pipe band, but I'm not sure the appetite of the neighbors at 9 a.m. on any morning is what you want to be woken up to.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
if an exemption is granted at 9 a.m. on the Friday, then we can request that bagpipes are not part of that.
They're just a special thing for Sunday, maybe, for the final.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
would prefer
understanding.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
That's what I
Yep.
was, yeah,
okay.
thank you.
With
Okay.
that, I will recommend that council direct the CAO to approve an exemption to noise control bylaw 950 to allow the organizers of BC Bike Race to use amplified music and announcements at Village Park on Friday, July 4th from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and amplified music and entertainment at Village Park on Sunday, July 6th from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Next up is the CBRD 2025 UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund application. Hello, Mike.
Evening, Mayor and Council. So this is, again, the same grants we've put in for the last few years. And so it's a Comox Valley-wide participation, and so Cumberland, they're asking Cumberland to tag along on that. Some of it's for equipment, which we got all our equipment last year, if you remember. I think Comox is getting a pile of equipment out of this grant this year. And it's helped train our ESS people that we use for disasters and stuff, or somebody's house burns down or whatever. So, yeah, we just asked the council's permission to join in on the grant.
Just one quick question. Is the $200,000 and $150,000, is that our share of the grant, or is that the total grant for the
It's a
the
total
valley?
grant, yeah.
Total grant for.
So we
Okay.
will be getting pieces out of that money,
Yeah,
and I believe Comox is getting the biggest share with all the equipment. We got like the 60,000 we got last year for equipment.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So so each municipality can apply for a certain amount, but if we go together, we get way more.
And that's right.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
And, yeah,
And by the way, in the last 3 years, our emergency services has gone to a whole new another level. It's really awesome, actually, since what I remember when I first started being chief. Now it's like, there's some training to be done because we've got new people all the time, but it's really something now.
Yeah, that shared service has made a huge difference.
Yeah,
I think.
it's very good.
excellent.
Thanks. So there's a
I'll
recommendation
move
there.
the council approves the submission of a regional application to the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for up to $200,000 under the Emergency Operations Center Equipment and Training Stream, and up to $150,000 under the Emergency Support Services Equipment and Training Stream to enhance local capacity in both emergency support services and emergency operations centers. And further, that the CBRD be designated as the fiscal host responsible for receiving and managing any grant funding on behalf of the Village of Cumberland.
Second.
All in favor?
Except for Becky's tax.
Okay, and that's carried unanimously.
Am I?
Thank you. Oh, and Councillor Barkey has joined us.
Yeah, that was
Excellent.
him honking his second.
Oh, good.
No, I'm in a fairy term and all
Yes.
this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just bear with me. If I go blank and you don't see me, just carry on and I'll join as I can.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
We will accept a honk as a second.
Thank you, yes. Try and pay attention. Okay, up next is approval of Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan report and submission to Ministry of Environment. Come on up, Jason.
I'm not using the mic.
We're not using it?
No.
We're good?
You can, as long as you're not too close.
Yeah, you just put it on the,
Or put it up
thing.
here? All right,
Yeah.
all right.
So
We'll do like that.
online people are, yeah.
Perfect. So, good evening. We have now come to the point with our Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan. We're bringing it forward to council to take a look at the draft that's been completed in the hopes that we can finalize this, send it off to the Ministry of Environment. There is one final piece that comes with our Liquid Waste Management Plan around our goals for the storm sewer separation. So in your package, you'll see some information on how council feels is the best process to move forward with finalizing this storm sewer separation plan. So the two recommendations we brought forward was around choosing whether we want that to be funded by parcel taxes or whether we want that to be funded by borrowing moving forward. And then the second recommendation is the hope the council will bring forward the recommendation to send our liquid waste management plan to Ministry of Environment and Parks to have it be finalized.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Questions, council?
I'll speak to this for a moment.
Thank you.
As I sat on the, part of the steering committee for this, the recommendation that we came up with at the committee was to send it to council, but generally in favor of putting it as strictly a parcel tax and not borrowing at this time. Taking the full 20 years to complete this separation, as the plan at the wastewater treatment plant right now is to handle all of the current flows that are happening with the current system. So separating the wastewater flows will be beneficial, but they're not immediately necessary with the design that we have at the moment. So stretching it over the 20 years, I think, would give us an opportunity to pursue the most grant funding that we could.
For sure.
And hopefully lower the costs of this from where they are now. So that's sort of where I'm gonna fall on this. I'm in favor of not borrowing more money, of trying to pursue as many grant opportunities as we can, and stretching this out over the full 20 years. The plan is still at the ministry right now for their first look. They haven't sent
So we
any
sent the
feedback.
draft in late March to the Ministry of Environment to have them do a review. We haven't heard any real feedback from them at this point. And so the hope was that we would leave it with them for a period of time and then submit the final. So I do have a meeting with the Ministry of Environment and Parks in June to discuss kind of our plans and our timelines. But for now, I think we should move forward with finalizing this and getting it over to them. They've had the draft now for a period of time. I think it's important we keep moving forward as a village to ensure that we're not creating any unforeseen delays within the process.
Okay, great. It is cheaper for our residents if we don't borrow.
Correct.
Correct.
No interest paid.
Clarifying that. Any other comments from our online attendees?
Yes, yeah, can I
None
ask?
here, I agree.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ward and then
Go
Councillor
ahead,
Barkey.
Nick.
No problem. I've asked before, I know we've got potentially in progress to look at the difference between using a parcel tax or other taxation or fee mechanisms, because I feel parcel taxes can be regressive, and those with high usage pay the same amount as those with low usage. So can I ask, by submitting this, do we commit to a parcel tax or to funding it from, a revenue type of either taxation or utility, or are we specifically committing to a parcel?
Paul Nash is on the line right now. Paul, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, good evening. I'll speak to that. And it's a very good question. I'm going to give you half an answer. I could be a politician saying something like that. So here we go. The LWMP, if we are going to use borrowing, then there would be a borrowing bylaw as part of the LWMP, and it gets authorised by the Minister of Environment in place of doing an AAP or a referendum. If we're going to pay for it by other means, be it a parcel tax or general property tax or a head tax or demanding people's firstborn, whatever, anything other than borrowing, it doesn't really matter that we specify the method, or we're not held to the method. What is important is that we are held to delivering on the program. And if we changed our minds, for example, and a few years down the road, we decided we wanted to borrow, then we could either pursue an AAP or a referendum or go back for a plan amendment. So the key point from the plan is if it's borrowing, it has to be in the plan. If it's funded by municipal revenues, by whatever source, we just have to state that, which we can, and the exact means is up to Cumberland.
Thank you. And, sorry, Councillor Moore, did you have more?
No, other than to observe that it's like $1,000 per household. You know, that's a tax increase, and you know, it's the first time I've seen it all added up. And I know we've had this before, but it's certainly of note, right? To remind them.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Wastewater is expensive. Councillor Barecki?
No, that actually answers my question there, so thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd support not borrowing.
So there's a recommendation.
Excuse me, could Councillor Sutherland repeat his comment there?
I just support not borrowing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a recommendation there, if that's all the questions.
I'll move that council confirms the payment, the municipal funded plan method for storm sanitary sewer separation program in the stage 3 liquid waste management plan. And that council, acting as the liquid waste management plan steering committee, approves the stage 3 liquid waste management plan report for submission to the BC Ministry of Environment and Parks.
Thank you. Seconder?
Second.
Thank you.
Oh.
Everyone, or all in favor? Councillor Barecki?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Thank you. And that is carried. Thank you so much. This is a 27-year journey, wrapping up with you
Yeah.
submitting it. So
It's
congratulations.
been a long process for sure. I
It's been a
definitely
long
can see that.
process,
Yep.
and this is a monumental step. So
Yes.
thank you so much for your work on this.
Almost across the line.
It's all,
We're at the
almost
line.
there.
Let's see the line.
Okay, and on to the next very expensive thing, number 2 dam project update.
Perfect. So that's me as well. So what I've brought forward to council is 2 items. One is our climate hazard assessment that we had completed. That's in draft phase right now. I wanted to bring that forward to you immediately as I received it. An important aspect of our number 2 dam process is understanding how we can make it a sustainable long-term solution for the village. And so I brought that forward. That's going to form part of our request for proposal that we'll end up doing for a design engineer to help them kind of guide them towards what we need to do with this project. And the other item in there is our updated estimates from Tetra Tech showing that this project from the previous estimates created years ago has gone up by approximately 60%. So that's created quite a substantial difference between what we have in funding and what it's going to cost. We're going to be moving forward with, at future council meetings, looking at other funding opportunities that we can bring forward to support this project. But I wanted to bring that report forward to you guys as soon as possible to understand where we're at with this. Of course, the risk with this would be that, you know, staff feels that we should move forward with getting a design engineer on so we can begin this work, begin designing it, begin understanding what we're gonna need to do to create a, you know, number 2 dam and water solution for the village. The risk to that being that if we were to create this and find out we have no funding over and above what we already have secured, we may have to reduce the scope of this project to the bare minimum of meeting the requirements of the dam safety officer, which may mean no further water supply increases or those types of things. So I think, you know, the important piece here is that the estimates have come in significantly higher than what we previously had hoped with the years that have gone by. We will continue working forward to try and find funding to support that gap. But bringing forward to council to see if there's an appetite to move forward with an RFP to get the design engineers in to start taking a look at what we actually need to do to create something here.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yep. I've got a few, I guess. Based on the sort of 3 options that were presented, and if we needed to look at cost savings because we didn't have any further funding, can we not steer all of the water down Cumberland Creek and not remediate the north arm? Would that be
That creates
how we're
an
looking?
overload at Henderson.
Oh,
So even within this, you know, we're looking at ensuring that Henderson gets upgraded to a point where it can feasibly handle the amount of water flowing towards it.
yeah,
So if we were to flow all the water towards Henderson, we do overpower that reservoir and that dam. And so it becomes a very fine-tuned game of, we have an amount of water, we have extreme water flow differences between summer and winter. Where can they go sustainably, and what impact does that have? And so we're looking at ways to limit the water going out the north branch through to Perseverance Creek to a point where it's sustainable, as well as supporting that creek channel to ensure it can handle the water flowing, but then also ensuring we can handle the water that's going to Henderson and making sure that it's being built in a way that we're not going to be overdoing it. Right now the spillway is limited there, so we can't really just say we're going to turn this tap off and send it all one direction, because we will overrun that reservoir and that dam. So that's part of the process that we had KWL look at, is what are our options here? What do we have? What are our water flows in all the different directions? And then we want to bring that forward to this design engineer to say, what is the most logical process for the community to move forward with that's going to ensure that we get sustainability within this moving forward? We highlight in there as well, KWL brought up the idea of, do we want a backup water flow system through CBRD? So we highlight that in the report as well. So really, I think there is also probably a look in the future to an overall water strategy for the village of how we're going to support who's here now and with the different changes in climate as we move forward.
So since 80% of the watershed is above Hamilton, wouldn't it make more sense to have a small dam at Hamilton and use that as a place to buffer the water flows, because it's a much bigger lake?
Yeah.
A 1 foot of dam at
For sure.
Hamilton will control
Yeah.
way more water flow than we can anywhere further downstream.
Yeah, and we had a discussion about that, and again, that's where I would want, part of the RFP process, we'd want to bring forward the idea with the design engineers to review the feasibility of this entire watershed flow here and figure out what we need to do. The challenge we have right now is the number 2 dam is not currently seismically able to stay the way it is.
Yes.
So I would love to say, let's leave number 2 as it is, let's focus on Hamilton, and we'll create a solution there. Challenge being, that would mean we do 2 dams. And so whether or not we want to look at Hamilton as a future option, whether we want to look at, what we can actually hold there, maybe something we want to bring forward. And, as we go through the RFP process, as they begin the design work, do we look at, one of the things that may come of this, if we don't have the funding availability, is that we partially decommission number 2. But at this point, without having an engineer on, we can't really start diving into the options within this watershed area. So we want to understand how to best move forward supporting the watershed as a whole, but ensuring we're creating the number 2 dam in a way that's going to last the test of time moving forward, whatever that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing, just while we're talking about Hamilton, is that used to be considerably larger. So it's also lost an enormous amount of capacity. I think the report says it was 170,000 cubic meters, and now it's 45,000 cubic meters. So I think you're right. I think we need to look at the whole system. Anyway, I'll leave that there and let other people speak first before we talk about the CVRD connection.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, just my comment more is about the backup of the CVRD water system, because like we've been pouring all systems go into staying Cumberland and not going into that system. So I just kind of freaks me out to see that tag onto the end of a report, like, or we could just do this. It just seems like a very different direction within a very different price tag attached to it.
It is a very different direction. I think that that's where they wanted to make that kind of known to council, that, you know, CVRD does have a water filtration system, they have a water system. Do we want to begin having conversations with them about what it looks like for possibilities of Cumberland having that as a backup or part of our water supply? And I think that that becomes a conversation we need to start at the CVRD level to ensure there's appetite and capacity, but then also from a council level that we're comfortable kind of moving that direction over the current setup that we have.
Feels like we would council decision first and then move to CVRD
For sure.
Yeah.
We'd want guidance from council.
Yeah.
That's the direction you'd want us to start taking a look at.
Comments on that, Councillor Barkey or Councillor Ward?
Yeah, I was just, I mean, it's early to have that conversation. Obviously, we spent a lot of money on our current water system, and we're gonna have to do something with that dam anyway. Do we have even a rough ballpark CVRD, or is that too premature to even consider?
No, I don't think
No,
we've
we
had
do not
those.
have any preliminary information from them yet.
Okay, I mean, the optics aren't good, obviously, of joining late in the game with something like that, and we are gonna have to spend money on it, but it'd be nice to know what a rough ballpark would be, considering our current usage before we charge ahead on any decisions, so,
Yeah.
thank you, that's all my only comment.
Thank you for that. I think part of my concern around the conversation around CVRD is that even if we did connect to the CVRD, we'd still have to maintain the dams we have, and we wouldn't want to give up our water licenses. So, so now we're adding a second system at a cost, as well as managing our first system. It does give us a backup. If we were independent, if we were like so rich we couldn't stand ourselves, maybe we would do that. But right now we struggle to pay for all the systems we have. And so I'd rather see that energy going into making our system as resilient as possible, and leave the conversation around the CVRD to another time. But I think it's appropriate for staff to bring that forward to us, because I think we need to be constantly thinking about what is the most efficient way to manage these systems for a small community. So that's my perspective on that. Councillor Ward, did you want to speak before Councillor Therrien goes again?
No, I have nothing further to add. My questions have been
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Just echoing your comments, Sarah, I would like to see just the results of a rough conversation with CVRD, and if there's any appetite even at that end. Bearing in mind that for the CVRD, it may be in their benefit. We are the shortest way to Royston for them.
It's true.
We have pipes that already carry water from Bevan to the edge of Royston, or into Royston, because we're currently supplying water to Royston.
Yep.
So it may be in their benefit as well. And something that they would just want to do, I don't know. But I think it's a conversation worth having, before we definitely say no.
Yeah, and
And I understand where you're coming from, that, you know, we have our system and that, but
yeah.
who knows what drought conditions are gonna look like in 30 years? And the lake is that lake is much bigger than those lakes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other consideration, obviously, well, not obviously, the other consideration for us is should we invest in our system and expand both Hamilton and number 2, or however that ends up looking, once the engineer gets their hands on it. There could be an opportunity for us to sell water, to continue to sell water to Royston, or to continue to sell water to, or to start selling water to Comox lands, Comox with a K lands. So I think all that needs to be part of this discussion as well. What opportunities are there for us as well?
For sure.
Does anybody else have anything while I'm looking at my notes? Maybe that's it.
What I think I've just heard around the table, some interest in opening that conversation, some and some other thoughts. So, do we have a conclusion there, or do?
The conversation about the CBRD, you mean? Yes. So I think what we're suggesting to staff is that we spend a very little amount of energy and time having a brief conversation with the CBRD about that option, but focus most of our energy on making our system resilient. Is what I heard around the table. I stand to be corrected. No?
Thank you. I support.
Okay, great. So there's a recommendation there.
I'll move that council receive the number 2 dam draft project climate hazard assessment and updated cost estimates reports for information, and that council direct staff to continue with the request for proposal for design and engineering services for the number 2 dam project.
And find some grant money.
Do our best.
Second.
And all in favor? None opposed?
Yes.
Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
guys.
Jason. And the next topic is Village Hall meeting topics. So I'm just going to speak to this, I think, unless Rachel wants to. So after several conversations in the community and with the business community, I think there's an opportunity for us to bring Cumberland together for a conversation around youth in the community, and add that to our regular Village Hall meetings. So we would make the focus youth, but also people can always bring up whatever they like. Village Hall meetings are open to everyone, and there's normally no set agenda, and there's no set topic, but given some of the conversations I've had, I think it's a timely opportunity for us to talk about youth. So, questions, comments?
Sounds good.
No, I think, I support this. I think this is a good idea.
Okay, so there's a recommendation there.
Also supported.
Thank you, Councillor. Who wants to
I'll
read
move the
that?
council establish the focus topic of youth for the June 2nd, 2025 Village Hall.
Okay, to be held hopefully in Village Square, unless it rains. Seconder?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
And all in favor? And that's
Yeah.
5 hands. Okay, that's carried unanimously. And now we are on to 3345 Second Street, Waxidos Housing Zoning Bylaw Amendment. Are you gonna wear 2 hats right now?
I actually have Bridget Reynolds
Oh, Bridget's gonna do it.
on the line to present this report to you.
Excellent, thank you. Hi, Bridget. Hi, good evening, Mayor Brown and council members. And Holly Pretty's also here from Macola Housing, so she may be able to answer some questions if I'm unable, or Courtney Simpson, Director of Planning, may be able to help out as well. So as you know from the staff report, we're considering, our council's considering third and final reading of the zoning bylaw amendment 1223 for the property at 3345 2nd Street. Quox Deep Thus Housing. Also consideration of adopting the Ambleside Alley closure bylaw number 1108 and authorizing notice regarding the land lease between the village and Vancouver Island Health Authority, and to modify the lease to change the sunset clause in that lease. So if you recall, council granted first and second reading on January 13th to the zoning amendment bylaw 1223. And what this zoning amendment bylaw does is to amend section 7.11, the RM4, or the residential multifamily zone, to increase the permitted density from 85 units per hectare to 145 units per hectare, and to increase the maximum principal height from 12.5 meters to 14.5 meters for the proposed development. And the amendment bylaw would also amend or add RM4 to the parking table in Part 6 of the zoning bylaw. There's also a minor amendment to the bylaw itself with regards to the unit per hectare reference. It was 84 in the original bylaw, and it should actually have read 85 units per hectare. So you're probably familiar with the housing project. It's intended to provide a mix of 1 to 4 bedroom units, totaling 34 units. And the village entered into a memorandum of understanding with Macola Housing to apply for funding to build the project. And that's an application to BC Housing funding. And should BC Housing grant the funding, once the funding window opens, the village would have to formalize the partnership agreement, which would include preparing any required public notice with regards to that relationship. The previous staff report included a number of conditions that were to be met prior to adopting bylaw 1223. And these conditions had to do with some of the agreements that are registered on the title of the property. And based on discussions with Macola Housing and BC Housing staff, we recommend that these agreements be reviewed by council once BC Housing has confirmed funding. And this is recommended because we anticipate that BC Housing might want to make some additional changes, minor changes to some of these agreements. And so we want to avoid having to bring the agreements back to council on numerous occasions. The development permit was originally issued in 2023 for the 3-story building, and this needs to be amended to reflect the addition of the 4th floor. A development variance permit was also issued in 2023, and that was about reducing the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 2 meters, and reducing the number of parking spaces from 22 to 8. And that DVP also needs to be amended to reflect the increase in the units, which affects the number of parking stalls. So increasing the required number from 22 to 34. And currently, or the proposal right now provides 8 parking spaces on the subject property. And then there's also necessary to modify the variance with regards to the minimum number of courtesy parking spaces for pregnant women and persons with young children, from 2 to 0. And just as a note, that requirement is understood to really to be required for commercial properties, but the way it's written in the bylaw, it would show that it is required, so a variance is necessary for this application.
Also, it's also necessary to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 2 meters for the 4th story. So even though council previously granted it for the 3-story buildings, the additional story requires a variance. Now both DP and DDP would be presented to council for approval prior, or should BC Housing funding be confirmed. And again, that's recommended because we anticipate that BC Housing may want some changes to the development permit. And so again, you know, with the agreements, we don't want to be coming back with sort of agreements and applications and so on multiple times. While the DDP isn't under consideration tonight, I'm just going to touch on the parking variance because I know that's an important part of this application. So the required parking for this development is 34 parking stalls, and as mentioned, 8 are proposed on the subject property. So based on concerns and questions that were raised by community members and at the January 13th council meeting, council provided direction to work with Vancouver Island Health staff about the potential to have shared parking agreement. And so staff in Macola Housing hired Watt Consulting Group, they're a transportation consultant, and hired them to determine what the total parking demand is for the proposed development compared to the proposed supply. So this analysis, there were 3 elements to this analysis, and the transportation study is part of the agenda. I think it's attachment 4. 3 elements of the analysis include a comparative review of similar affordable multifamily sites across the province. They also considered on-street parking usage in the surrounding streets, and they also looked at parking demand in the Cumberland Lodge parking lots. Not going into much more detail, but the consultants did conclude that the estimated parking deficit of parking spaces, estimated deficit of parking spaces could be offset based upon the proposed mitigations and also proposed change in BC Transit scheduling. So there's, as part of the application, the requirement to provide an additional 14 on-street parking spaces on 2nd Street, an addition of long-term bicycle parking spaces consistent with the zoning bylaw. Those would be included on the subject property. And also the suggestion that was presented at the original council meeting on the 13th of January, pursuing the EVO or bike share drop station in front of the development. And that's the CDRD's bike share program. And then the CDRD Transit Board recently requested increased hours for Cumberland Transit routes 2 and 20 that would result in more frequent service between Cumberland and Courtenay. So going from, you know, once per hour to more frequently of once per half an hour. And the study concludes that that entering into a shared agreement with the Vancouver Island Health Authority for parking spaces on the Cumberland Lodge site is not necessary. So again, the DDP and DP, we will be bringing that back to council at a later date once funding has been confirmed, and certainly prior to the issuance of the development permit. Another important piece of this application relates to 3 agreements that need to be amended. And again, while they're not, with the exception of the lease, part of this, the staff recommendation, I'll just touch on them briefly. These would need to be amended prior to issuance of building permit. And we did say with the first and second reading report that the amended agreements would be submitted to council with 3rd reading. But as with the DP and the DPP, we would recommend that these revised agreements be brought forward later, anticipating that BC Housing is likely to want some amendments to the agreements, particularly the housing agreement. So the agreements are between Village and Vancouver Island Health, and also includes reference to Macola Housing as the operator. So we've got the access agreement about using the vehicular access and parking on Cumberland Lodge property. And that needs to be amended to change the name of the operator to Macola Housing. There's the land lease, and that relates to changing the number of units and the operator, and also the commencement date or start date of the project, because the original agreement is now almost 2 years old. And then there's the housing agreement that's adopted by bylaw, and it requires some amendments. We previously presented that VIHA has requested the number of VIHA dedicated units be increased from 4 to 6 for VIHA staff, and also that their residency requirement be expanded to, as currently drafted, it is for staff who are living within the Village of Cumberland, and they identify that the need is greater, and they'd like to have consideration for staff who are living in the Comox Valley Regional District. Another piece of this application at this point deals with the lane closure, the Ambleside Alley, which runs between the subject property and the Cumberland Lodge parking lot. In 2019, Council introduced and gave 2 readings to the Ambleside Alley Closure and Disposal Bylaw 1108 to remove its dedication as a highway and to dispose and convey of this 134 square meter portion of the closed alley. And to convey this to VIHA. The required notice was given at the time, and no submissions were received back in 2019. So the village's alley enhancement and management strategy, prepared back in 2018, notes that this portion of the alley is within the existing parking lot for the Cumberland Lodge property, and there's also a sanitary sewer line that runs through the portion of the alley. As far as notice for this project, or for this zoning amendment bylaw, it was completed consistent with the development application procedure bylaw. We held a public information meeting back in December, and a notice was placed on the property. An FAQ was prepared, and it was intended to answer many of the questions that were coming. And that's been posted on the website, and also the steps that have been followed of the process has been laid out on the website as well. Council's probably aware we've received a lot of comments since the public information meeting and after that, and these are also all included in the attachment to the report. And there are submissions from community members who support the project regardless of the variances. But there are also many community members who don't support the project, and they're concerned about the impacts to the neighborhood, with regards to height and parking and character and so on. So in summary, there's 5 recommendations on the table. The first is Council's consideration of amending the zoning amendment bylaw 1223 in section 2 to strike the reference to 84 units per hectare and substitute it with 85 units per hectare. Also to give consideration for 3rd reading and adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 1223 as amended. Council consideration of adopting Ambleside Alley Closure and Disposal Bylaw number 1108. that council authorize notification to the Vancouver Island Health Authority that the condition in section 2.1A of the lease regarding the suitability of the lands for the permitted use is satisfied, and that the condition in section 2.1B regarding tenant commencing construction at the site within 24 months, that be waived. And then there's also a council consideration for modifying the lease to add a sunset clause of June 16th, 2027 to the land lease, which is 48 months from the commencement date, and that's at the request of Vancouver Island Health Authority. So that's my report in sum, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks so much, Bridget. Questions, council?
Might as well kick this off. I've got a few.
Thank you.
Just in no particular order. Is the BC Transit upgrade, the increased service, is that confirmed, or is that just, are we getting half-hour service, or is that just a recommendation at this point?
I can speak to that. So it came to the CBRD, was a recommendation of the CBRD, I don't know how long ago. We've been trying for a while. We almost got it this year. We suspect that we will get it next year.
Great. That would be good news.
Yeah.
I believe there's 8 units now that are promised to VHA. Is that
6.
6?
6.
6?
6.
Can we still try and negotiate with VHA for those 6 parking spaces? The parking report from Watt is great, that they think that there's ample space around it, but I still think it would relieve some minds if we confirmed another 6 dedicated spaces. Personally, I'd like to see that still pursued, because they are going to be, those units are going to be VHA units. Even if they work right there and walk to work, presumably they will still own a car, and hopefully it could just have a permanent parking space in the VHA lot.
Can I just comment on that?
Yeah.
One issue at a time.
So,
Okay,
and if council wishes to do that, to negotiate with whoever those spaces, we would want to understand if you would be okay with, considering they're another provincial entity, that we don't, that not be a reason to delay readings of the bylaw. So maybe to consider, could that happen separately from the bylaw? And the reason I say that is because we are expecting the grant program to open kind of any day. And it might take some time to complete that negotiation. Certainly, even if they agree to get to the point of a written agreement that's signed by everyone who needs to sign it, that could take quite some time.
Yeah.
So that would just miss my comment there.
Okay.
And then another comment is that, just to be clear, the VHA employees who might live in these 6 units don't necessarily work at the Cumberland Lodge. They might work at a VHA location elsewhere in the Comox Valley.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Yep.
I think that's what, so when, Bridget, when you were doing the report, you said they wanted to expand it to people living elsewhere, but I think you
Yeah.
meant working.
Ah,
Yeah,
yes.
Yes,
okay.
that's correct, sorry.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I think that because the VHA units are market units, it's much more likely that those people will have cars, particularly electric cars, and there's no provision for EV either, so it would be great if they provided those stalls and potentially EV charging.
There
But I
is,
also don't want it to hold up the, so, yes, but go
and
ahead.
just a point of clarity, there is one EV charging
Oh, good.
space within the
Okay.
8 spaces on the property.
Oh, perfect, okay. I didn't see that in the report.
Just one last sort of weird question, maybe. Is the sewer line then not part of the property disposal?
Yeah, that's correct. I think it sounded like Bridget said that the sewer was within the area to be disposed, but it's not. It's in a portion of the alley adjacent to the portion to be disposed of. So
So-
the sewer is
So
still,
the village will retain one very narrow
Strip.
lane, walkway, basically, behind the property there then?
the sewer line goes, so in this area, the lane is like a T,
Okay,
and there's only one arm of the T that would be closed. And
And
the
that's
sewer
not
is
the
in the
one-
other areas.
I see, okay, that makes more sense to me now. And then lastly, all of the variances that were being asked for, I do not see them in the recommendations. How,
Yeah,
is that coming at a later time, or?
I could let Bridget answer that one.
Sure, yeah, the idea is to bring them forward with the development permit
Okay,
and agreements prior to issuance of building permit, you know, anticipating that BC Housing might want some changes to the DP. So just to keep it all together with DP, DVP and agreements.
okay, thank you. And then if I may, just a comment. I'm gonna be supporting this. I understand that there may be some community impacts to this proposal, but I'm going to be supporting it on the grounds that I think this housing is critically needed. We are losing residents because they are being priced out, gentrified out of this community. And I hate seeing them go. Maybe we can get some of them back if we can provide some affordable units. Maybe we can prevent others from leaving. I think the needs of those community members outweigh the possible inconveniences of not being able to find a parking spot directly in front of your home. That's my feeling on the subject.
Thank you, Counselor. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add, just that I really support the idea of pushing that with VHA. I don't want to hold this up either, but I think that's a great idea, and I really feel like that seems reasonable on both ends of that negotiation. And if I were to comment, I would echo Councilor Tyrion's comments, and just to look at the building downtown. We're pretty scared about that coming in, and several years later, I really haven't seen any bad issues from parking from that building, considering all the 23 units. I don't see the 23 cars clogging that part of town, so I really feel like that has proven out that this will be okay. So I'm hoping everyone else shares that opinion.
Thank you, Counselor. Who wants to go next, Counselor Barecki or Counselor Ward?
Yeah, I just had a question for staff. So if the project doesn't move forward with BC Housing, does this zoning then revert back, or is the similar project then, you know, on the slate for someone else, or for VHA to pass along to another developer in the future?
I mean, council could choose to zone it back to what it was, or to reduce the, you know, to change the zoning, but I'm not sure that there's really any other options out there for funding. So if it doesn't proceed, then the zoning would remain, but it would still, it'd still be, but yeah, Courtney, you may have something more to add to that.
No, thanks, nothing more, just to reiterate, there's no, we can't think of a way to automatically down zone, revert back to the old zoning, so that would be something council could initiate.
But even if we.
Copy that. So then,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Even if we.
So
even if- Even if we left the zoning in place.
Go ahead, Vicky, I'll stop now.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay, so it's hard to know when to talk. Even if we left the zoning in place, only a nonprofit housing provider with funding from the province would be able to move this project forward because of the way we've created the zoning bylaw.
There still would
Copy that.
be,
Okay, thanks.
yeah, maybe just to clarify, correct at the density we're talking about of the 34 units, because that includes a density bonus. But the base density is still higher than just single family, which it was previously. So council might still want to consider looking at that zoning if this project isn't gonna go ahead as funded.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. And my other comment was I don't see parking as being a huge issue here. I'm not thrilled about the scale of it, for the residents around it, but we are caught a little bit in a rock and a hard place here that if we don't go a bit bigger, this project's just not going to feasibly make it through BC Housing selection process. It's a bit of a painful decision on that. I think everyone would like to see something a lot smaller in the neighborhood, for sure, but it's a real make or break it point. So I can recognize the residents' pain around it, but yeah, that's my other comment. I don't see any other way to get this built. So I would also really like to see the step up with those parking spots. That parking lot's empty most of the time. I don't foresee that being a big issue from their standpoint, given the scale of the partnership that this is going to go. But I would like to see some kind of memorandum of understanding written up in the event that this is approved by BC Housing. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ward, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I gave my rationale for my support of this bylaw at the last readings. One of the many concerns that we're receiving are about parking and traffic, and I expressed at that time that I wanted us to explore a shared agreement with VHA, and now we have a parking study, which I'm really grateful for the investment of time and effort and money to produce that data. I think it's really important that we use the data we're given, and that data says that there's sufficient parking without that shared agreement, which was news to me, because my estimate was higher than that one's come in. So given that we have that data in front of us, I actually feel that we are ready to go forward on the parking side. So I wouldn't necessarily, if VHA are indicating that they're open to an agreement, that's fine. But if it's going to take staff time and resources, then I think we've got the information we need to not do that. I would ask that a question. The concerns have been about parking and traffic. I personally felt that the increase in traffic is very minimal. But is it fair to say that the parking study concludes that there's ample parking and a very small impact on neighbourhood parking? Can we sort of relate that to a similarly small impact on traffic, or is that a completely separate issue?
I'm not a traffic consultant, but I think that, part of the analysis does indicate that, generally a development of this nature tends to demand fewer vehicles. So there'd be then lesser cars, and hopefully, people using their bicycle or using public transit.
Okay, thank you. And I'm also very pleased to hear that we might be close to half-hour service transit as well. That would be really good news. All right. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor. That leaves me, if there's no more comments. I've already spoken to the parking issue and the concerns. I think there's plenty of on-street parking up there, and I also think that even without an agreement with VHA, people will use that parking lot because it's empty at night, and so why wouldn't you? It's an unregulated parking lot, and it doesn't sound like VHA is terribly concerned about it. I did have questions around the stormwater, and and partly just ensuring that when we go to building permit, that we are addressing the 1 to 100 storm, or whatever we have decided in previous conversations around that stormwater management policy, because I know we had a conversation, but I'm not sure it's in bylaw. I think it's probably best practice that we look at 1 in 100. But the stormwater report does speak to how anything over a 1 in 10 year storm will be handled. And it's my understanding from that, from reading that report, that that the curb and gutter and other improvements that will happen along 2nd Street will also mitigate the stormwater that is currently running off the property behind the 2nd Street property, behind 3345, and might help mitigate that existing problem as well as any increased stormwater flow, because right now there's no curb and gutter at all on that side of the street. So I think that's a good plan. And like other councillors have said, well, I'm just gonna speak personally, if I couldn't have bought my house for under $200,000, I would not be living here. And there's a lot of people like me in this community like that, and there's a lot of people like me that didn't get into the market when it was cheap. Part of the reason Cumberland is so unique and dynamic is because we have that mix of people who have means and people who don't have means that manage to secure housing for themselves back when it was a very affordable place. And I understand how hard the change that we've seen in this community is. It's not easy for any of us. Don't think council is all super stoked about the dramatic changes that have happened here either. We are doing our best to mitigate the changes in our community, and this is a huge way that we can do that. We can actually try and bring people back to the community that were pushed out because our housing costs have increased by 54% in the last several years. And we're also providing for employees and other people who want to live here who can't afford our housing costs. And like Councillor Sullivan said, when the 2 4-stories went in downtown, I was quite concerned about the parking implications and how that would all play out, and we've received no concerns, no complaints about that at all. And so while it is challenging to put this kind of high density development in a single family neighborhood, it is what we will have to do in order to house people without sprawling and costing our taxpayers even more money to service new development lands. So I think this is just the responsible way to move forward, and I'm definitely in favor of it. I believe we started looking for affordable housing 3 councils ago when we started our homelessness and affordable housing committee. And this is the only project that is going to bring us truly affordable housing. And so, I'm in favor of it. There's a recommendation there. Anybody would like to move it?
Sure, I'll do the reading tonight. I'll move that council amend zoning amendment bylaw number 1223/2025 in section 2.d by striking 84 UPH and substituting 85 UPH. And the council give 3rd reading to and adopt zoning amendment bylaw number 1223/2025 as amended. The council adopt Ambleside Alley closure and disposal bylaw number 1108/2019. The council authorize notification to the VHA that the condition in section 2.1A of the lease for 3345 2nd Street regarding the suitability of the lands for the permitted use is satisfied, and that the condition in section 2.1B regarding the tenant commencing construction at the site within 24 months of the commencement date is waived. And the council agreed to modify the lease to add a sunset clause of June 16th, 2027, 48 months from the commencement date as requested by VHA.
Thank you, councillors. Seconder? Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. All in favor? I see 5. Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Okay, new business. Notices, motions, and announcements. Please do check the website before attending any of these meetings to make sure that they are actually happening. Our next meeting is a Village Hall meeting. Village Hall meetings are open to anyone in the community to raise questions, bring suggestions, just talk about stuff. The focus of this Village Hall will be youth, but there will be also time allotted for other conversations. And that's June 2nd at 7 p.m. in Village Square, unless it's pouring rain, in which case we'll be here. Questions? Does anyone have questions in the audience?
Am I allowed to ask questions about this project?
You're allowed to ask questions about anything on the agenda, yeah.
Okay. So for the Second Street project, in regards to gentrification, I appreciate like everybody's discussion on this. It actually answered some questions that I had. So the question that I do have that came up is, so in regards to gentrification and increased costs for, that is like pushing people out of the village, one thing that's also happening is, and I'm not speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for people in the community who have, spoken or whatever, is that sort of like people on the lower income of the spectrum, seniors on fixed incomes, they are starting to become quite burdened by their property taxes. And it is what it is, but some seniors, their property taxes went up by like $500 this year, which is quite a lot if you're on a fixed income. And inevitably, this project is going to have our property taxes inevitably will be required to go up to service this project. Is that part of your consideration in the gentrification of people being pushed out? Is homeowners on the lower end of the spectrum who might actually be forcibly pushed out of their homes just for lack of ability to continue affording to live here also?
So every year when we do our budget planning, we think very long and hard about the impacts of our tax increases on all our residents. And you're right, our taxes have gone up dramatically, and they will continue to go up dramatically because we have had a period of time in this village where there were not enough people and not enough tax base to do the repairs necessary on our infrastructure, and we are catching up. We have a wastewater project that was on the agenda tonight that has gone from $9 million to $21 million. There's no other way to pay for that. We've got as many grants as we could, but our residents will have to pay for that. Our drinking water dam system that you heard about earlier, the number 2 dam, that is also going to go on our taxes. Every road we repair, everything we do costs money. And it's been a long time coming to have the tax base that we do have now in order to effectively do these things and manage these infrastructure projects. So yes, we do think about it a lot, and if there were better mechanisms for local government to support lower income people with varying property tax rates or other mechanisms, we would definitely do that. We don't have those tools. We can only set one tax rate for residential property, and that applies to every resident. And so unfortunately, we're in a position where we can't do that. All we can offer is maybe you can defer your taxes if you're a senior. Like, we really don't have tools to mitigate that. And for this project, we, because of that very issue, we are continuing to collect property tax. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Continuing to collect the base property tax that we have always on the land. We are just not collecting property tax on the improvements on the land. So there will not be a net loss of taxes due to this project. But there will also not be a net gain.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything online?
So can I just clarify that for 1 second? Do the market units that are in this, will they be paying a property tax on the market units? Or is it
Yes.
just the affordable units?
It would, yeah, it has to be on the entire property is my understanding.
Okay,
The permissive tax exemption.
okay.
Otherwise, we would.
Yeah, again, we don't have the tools to
Yeah.
separate that out, right?
What I don't know is if there's an option to do a partial tax exemption as opposed to the,
Something we'll have to look into.
we'd have to look into that actually if council wanted. But so there would be, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Something
I guess
to
the
look into.
solution would just be for people getting pushed out of their homes to get onto the police registry and maybe get into the apartment building.
The deferral, property tax deferral, yeah.
Could there be a clause in that apartment project that allows Cumberland residents to get?
Yes, so yes, we are working with Macola on that, on how they'll choose tenants. They do have to be on the list. They do have to be on the BC Housing list for the subsidized units. But yes, I believe we'll have some agreement with Macola around priorities. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
Question by email, why hasn't there been advertising done prior to going into bylaw when the village's website states that the village is a partnership with Macola Housing Society?
We talked about this, but you might have to back me up, Courtney. So we understand that we need to provide that notice when we actually get funding for the building and enter that agreement with Macola. Right now, we don't have a housing project. We have an agreement to create a housing project. Once we have the housing project funded, then we would advertise for the agreement with Macola. Is that right?
Yeah.
Anything else? One more? Doesn't second reading need to be amended to insert 85 UPH from 84 to 145?
I think that's what we did.
Yeah,
That was
it's
the
in
first
the,
motion,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
it was in the motion.
It was in the motion. Oh, a question regarding the, I think this is regarding the request for permissive tax exemption for conservation lands. How much taxes are in the conservation lands?
That's why we've asked for a staff report to come back to us to show us what we would be losing should we provide that exemption.
That's it.
Okay. If that's all the questions, then we will move to closed, please.
I move the council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited for disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act and the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure to reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Is that it? Okay, seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjournment, or moving to close, sorry, don't go anywhere yet. Okay, thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone who came. Sorry, Skylar's gone, but thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming down and asking questions.